algorithm, and then it can say anything. So
sweet.
A lot of the it's horrifying.
That's pretty much how like Blank Check and Home Alone worked out. Was because of, like they said computers could do that a long time ago, and they couldn't. So like now there's going to be all these kids getting into mischief all over the country because it's finally possible. Unbelievable.
There was a bunch of like techies at young ages who were inspired by those movies.
Yeah,
there was a guy doing like art. I think he's a German guy. It was like he took a whole bunch of Bush talking at news conferences, and he would speak into a mic, and then it would just find the sections of different videos and clip it together to make Bush say anything.
That guy maybe
that was
is
like
the
2004, 2005.
Well, maybe after he did that, though, you know how like they take hackers and then they make them work for the CIA. Like sometimes I think like you get in trouble for something, and then they're like, "Listen, do you want to work for Google? Because we really need this." Like, oh shit, how's that work?
He actually talked about making it open source and then disappear.
Right?
From his website. He just didn't post on his
really gonna finish
website.
your sentences. God,
Sorry,
you're
wasn't
really
as
gonna
bad as
Man, what do you... Wow.
There's 3 people that get super excited about this conspiracy, you know.
Yeah, certain words he just rides out. Disappeared forever. Disembodied.
I'll be the one that'll eat you. You know, stuff like that.
Certain phrases he just...
that seems fine.
He forgets he's talking for a moment.
So you were the surprise child.
I was,
and,
yeah.
How did that go for your parents? Like, were they like, "Oh, listen, we were done parenting. Just go play in the backyard"?
There's a good amount of that. There's a good amount of that, and it's also it's a strange thing. Like, I mean, we all get to like experience our older siblings in different ways, but like. The arguments about my siblings that my parents were having that I heard through walls were about like, he's gonna flip the car, and I'm like, what if I flip the car? And I'm like, you know, I'm like 6, you know, like what if I do that stuff? Like, so it was a hard thing to like gauge, like how do I like please these giant people? Because what they're asking for my siblings like does not relate to my world at all. I'm like catching butterflies in a jar, like, is this cool? And like my brother's like, I'm wasted, you know. So it's like, really hard to know when are they gonna get angry, you know, like.
Wow, you can't even imagine.
Yeah. So that was like an odd thing, you know. But it also like it just made for like that space doesn't add for like a lot of like sibling like continuity, you know. It feels like that amount of space. If people are planning on having children, take this in mind. Like I don't feel like close to my siblings at all. It's like, oh yeah, it's my brother and my sister, but it's like they're just some peeps, really, you know. Like,
You're like, these are some human beings that I happen to share some DNA with. It turns out.
And some like brief shared memories, like some awesome stuff too. Because my sister had like great taste in music, and I remember being really young and like having the Beatles Revolver put on my head and being like, oh my god, like, you know. So some cool stuff like that too, of having, you know, older siblings who are like way hip on shit. Like, here, let's watch Grease.
It's like you show up and they're going through the most selfish part of their like phase of their life, you know. So like there's like this sort of my older siblings are much older than me, which is like one of those things where they were just old enough not to beat me up. But then my younger brother didn't get that same luxury because we're only like 3 years apart. So it's like I had great older brothers that were like, you know, it just would have been reckless for them to beat on me. And
you just got to...
Yeah, I just got to wail on my younger brother like, this is socially appropriate, you know. Like,
and where did you learn that?
It's
TV.
Just burning in me all the time.
Yeah, it's true. I'm the oldest, and I, you know, like beat the crap out of my sister and cousin for sure. I was merciless. Yeah. It's lucky that I haven't gone down any sort of horrible roads, for sure.
I mean, we're not so sure about them yet. We'll see.
Yeah. You know, it's fine. I've made amends. The 12th step of my life.
List,
yeah.
And then they just cross you off. See, I'm a middle kid.
The tattoo that doesn't feel like
I had a kid do that to me in high school once. I owed him 5 cents, and he pulled out a notepad, and it was a list of people and that owed him stuff, and he just
was this 1920s? What, 5 cents?
I know. I know.
Whoa!
I'm sure he's making great money now. Yeah.
All right. I'm not gonna kill you when I'm big enough.
He's an accountant for the mob now.
Oh man.
See, that would have a whole different context now. Yeah.
I'm gonna look him up here in a second.
He won't be in there.
He might be working at the dollar store. Actually,
no.
those sort of like ratios. The 5 cents. Really
this is super important. Yeah.
If he has that listed under his job on Facebook, accounting for the mob, then he's not gonna have that job for much longer. I don't think.
On Facebook.
It wasn't updated for 5 years.
Mob accountant.
There's just pictures of him with some like guys that are clearly the mob.
Yeah.
They're all like angry. Like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? Stop.
And it says like
He's
not
holding
tagged.
up the book of their.
Holding it up. Yeah.
Good, yeah.
Look at me,
My-
working for the big time mob.
Good lord. So Casey, have you ever worked for the mob?
Yeah.
I have not worked for the mob, unfortunately. That has not been any career that I've taken on.
Yeah,
He
you know,
keeps
they're
winking
not
when he
around.
says that.
Yeah,
No,
Yeah.
seriously. I haven't worked for the mob. No.
It's an audio recording. That's all I'm telling you. It's fine. Just keep writing on that notebook all the details you're telling me. That's funny. So did you get involved in music first? Because we started by talking about with Grateful Dead, and your siblings got you involved into music. Are you a musician? Did you do music before, say, comedy?
I am, I am a musician. I did get into music before comedy. I think that, like, I feel like maybe I was at the age, or maybe even it's just like where I grew up or where, things were. Like, I remember watching Saturday Night Live and being like, oh, I'd love to do that, but there was no path to that. There was no way to, it was not conceivable.
Right.
But it's like I could listen to, like, Jimmy Page and be like, oh, there's guitars, and I can, I ended up playing bass, but it's just like the elements are, were way more conceivable for, like, a way to, like, be popular, meet girls, and have, like, a cool thing to do.
Sure.
So comedy didn't even, like, come into my scope of being something I could do until I actually moved to Austin. So music, was a big part of my life, and still is. But at a young age, it definitely was like the way to go.
You have a lot of bands in high school and college and stuff.
I had this is really classic high school band experience. I had a high school band that was called Legal Eyes.
Yeah.
Spelled like eyes, yeah, on the drum head and everything.
Nice.
And there was a guitar player who, like, loved the Blue Oyster Cult, and then the lead singer loved Stone Temple Pilots. So it sort of sounded like those two things. It was actually surprisingly tolerable for being a high school band. Like, I listened back to it, like, I don't know, maybe like 10 years ago or something. I was like, actually, that's not, like, horrible. Like, I'm not, like, going to put it out there or anything, but it's like, it worked, Like,
It's great that you recorded it, though.
Yeah. Fortunately, the drummer had, like, his mother worked for Monterey Peninsula Artists, which, if they're, like, a huge company that books, who are some of the big ones? Like, they book Fish, and they booked, I can't remember, like, tons of bands all over the world. They do the big thing. So she had connections. So we actually, like, got to go into the studio.
Oh, wow.
And, like, went into a full-fledged studio, tape machines, which just, like, opened my eyes up because I'm an audio engineer as well. And that, like, was the thing that was like, oh, this is the cool place to do stuff, is to be in the studio. So, yeah, it was a super awesome experience for that, for that element.
That's amazing.
Cool.
Yeah, and having, like, engineers, like, treat you, like, seriously. Like, I was like, okay, like, there's a high school band. And they're like, no, we're going to get this right, and here's how you do it, and, like, kind of run through the whole thing. And I was like, wow, this is, rad. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that how you got into audio engineering then? Because you were...
It was, like,
into
being
that?
into that, like, when I walked in that studio, I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. Like, this is really, really, really cool. And back in those days, there was no computer in there. It was just tape machines, and it was a very different thing. And that was also, like, another thing. It's like, oh, I can do this. This is, like, something where I can be in these rooms and do that. And now, fortunately, we everything you can do on your iPhone.
Yeah.
And
No.
it's kind of taken some of like that sexiness and beauty out of it, but and it's also a lot of the money of being an engineer. But I'm willing to give that up for the democracy of, like, making music and putting it out for everybody. Like, it's way worth it rather than me being, like, behind the Studer or a Neve board and Studer tape machine and doing that. So I'm okay with it.
Wow, so did you learn how to do audio engineering with all the tape machines first?
I did, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I went to school right when there was, like, the changeover. So we'd have, like, both classes, and, nowadays you can be recording and, like, have, like, Gmail up and be having YouTube and, like, have your computer do everything. And back in those days, it was just like, bringing it up, okay, let's hope this doesn't crash. And, this was in school with, like, the fastest computer you could get, and it was really hard to manage, but it was like a foot in kind of each experience.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's great that they taught you both.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm just slightly younger than you. I'm 38, and they didn't teach me all the things. Like, there's a lot of things along the way that I wanted to learn, like in theater and stuff.
Yeah.
And they just taught us the, like, sort of the analog version of stuff. And then so there's a lot of stuff now that I have to teach myself to get done. Like, thank God my husband taught me a little bit of audio editing so I can do some of this.
Yeah.
And so now I use that for, like, theater sound work and stuff like that when we're trying to make sound cues for comedy stuff. But it's like, for a long time, I'd just be like, I can only do the this one because my college was like, no, we're just doing this. We're not going to teach you anymore.
Here's how you change a par can light.
Oh yeah. In fact, we were just at the New Movement, and we were looking at the lights and trying to like figure out. They were having some issues, and I was. Patrick and I were trying to help the tech guy to be like, what can we do to help you make this work better? But we have a DMX board and the whole thing. Yeah. And I was like, listen, if this were a par can, I could take it apart and put it back together and make the whole thing fine. But I don't know how to make these things work. I don't know how to focus them. I don't know how to do any of it. Yeah, that's cool that they like taught you both sides of it. That's really helpful.
That you got in there right there the transition because that would be super frustrating, I'm sure, to like learn the analog and then just be like, we're not doing that anymore.
UT Film School did that too. Like, they got rid of their like 16 mil editing bays too. So, and because I was in right around the time period like the Canon XL1 came out and everything, which was a big deal. And gosh, what was that? The guy who did Trainspotting, shot a horror movie. It was 28. Yeah, 28 days later we shot on like that, and so it was like. Digital was really kicking off at that time, and so we were still in there doing like 16 mil and actually doing like cutting tape for the audio and everything. And then like 2-3 years later, they just got rid of it all, and so I feel like there's students now that they've never touched like film. And it's like
that being said, it's really important to know both. You know what I mean? Especially if you actually want to not do it in a like I'm going to be a Hollywood famous whatever. I'm going to do it if you're going to do it in real life. So like my husband's an audio engineer, but he does it in like corporate events and in hotels and corporate and like convention centers. They still have the analog stuff. So oftentimes he's still the guy who they call to use these pieces of equipment that they bought years ago that they're not upgrading because they're like, what, it still works. And he's the only one that knows how to use it. And so they like try to hire these younger guys and they're like, I don't know how to make that lever work, man. And Chris is like, all right.
How do I sync my phone to it?
Is there an HDMI input in this? And you're like, get out of here, man. No. You know, but so sometimes having I'm sure, I don't know, has it helped you? Do you still work in audio engineering right now?
I do. It
must help you.
I don't necessarily do a lot of like, I do some gigs. I probably mix about like 3 or 4 albums a year.
Cool.
But I do that. Yeah, I do. I mix in my house, and but I don't really go out and do. I did live sound for about a decade, like touring around the country with jam bands and doing good, amazing stuff. And I don't do much of that anymore. Like that's definitely it's a great experience, super awesome. And I think every live sound guy out there, it's a great thing. It's but even that's changed. The technology's changed. But I feel like that analog element, though, of knowing that makes it like so easy to learn the digital stuff because it's all modeled off of that digital stuff. Like when I teach people now, like people will be like, "Hey, I got the software. Like, can you show me?" And I'll go over and I'll be like, "Okay, well, this is akin to a trim pot," and just like if they don't. There's no trim pot, so we like almost like the technology needs to jump again and like stop utilizing the language and stop utilizing the acronyms because there's like voltage controlled. Like there's no voltage. Like they stop calling this that. Like let's move to the next level and really use computers for what they can be done rather than like still kind of dragging some of this like terminology around. It confuses people usually. So.
Yeah. So you, I'm glad you got out of the live music situation. That can be a tough world. To continue to do, and it's sort of a thankless audio engineer job because you're actually making it great and probably the most important member of every band, yet they're like, oh, the sound guy's ruining it. And you're like, no, whatever you think is happening, you're wrong. Everyone loves it out there. Relax. But yeah, so do you use it in a regular job way right now, or do you have a separate job?
My like main livelihood is I'm a massage therapist.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. So I just I've kind of transitioned out, like being the unfortunate side of making records, because there was a point in time where I was just mixing albums, and it's super lonely nowadays.
Oh, sure.
Like it's just being being in front of a computer, and even being creative in front of a computer for 8 hours is still being in front of a computer for 8 hours.
Right.
And it's like, okay, I'm just sitting here, and it's like, okay, it's stopped losing its like romance and charm for me. I was like, even if I'm really involved in the project and really like it, I'm just sending emails back and forth with people. They're listening, they're sending me notes. Da 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 da.
Oh yeah.
I was like, well, what can I do to like connect with people and like give something, where some people have impact, like immediate impact. And I was like, oh, wait a second, massage therapy is a thing that like
Yeah.
people walk away from, and they're like, I feel good after that. Thank you.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, direct contact in a real way with a human being.